So, what made you decide to run for Congress as a Republican in New Jersey there?
Well, I didn't start out as a Republican. Before I went into the military, I was going in as a Democrat. That's primarily because everybody I knew was a Democrat growing up. When the 2008 election came around, I voted for Barack Obama. It seemed like we were going to have some good hope and change. And my perspective changed in 2011 when I was stationed in RAF Mildenhall in England when we started the bombing campaigns in Libya. I saw that the damage that Barack Obama caused and made problems far worse in Africa. It led to the creation of ISIS. It expanded terrorism even more. And I no longer aligned with the things that the Democratic Party were standing for. But even prior to that point, I had several friends in my life that were encouraging me to look into more conservative perspectives, more specifically with Ron Paul. And I was very interested in learning more about the Federal Reserve and the fractional reserve banking system and seeing how it's affected our country. But by the time I made the decision to switch parties, I'd already voted for Barack Obama. I got buyer's remorse. And this isn't actually my first time running for Congress. I ran initially in 2020 for the first time, and it's something that I didn't intend on doing. I never saw myself as someone who would get involved in politics per se. But in 2020, by the time Donald Trump had already done his first 3.5 terms, he's done exceptionally well. And the country was doing much better than any other president I've seen in my lifetime. And I was not even a fan of Donald Trump initially. I never was throughout my life. But when I started to hear some of the policies he was talking about, and I saw that they were actually going to resonate with my beliefs in terms of having more fiscal responsibility, securing our border, which is extremely important for me, especially since I'm a first generation American. My parents, they immigrated to this country as well. And seeing that the president wanted to put our country first and create a more merit-based system, I got behind him. And in 2020, when I decided to run, I ended up breaking a record as a Republican in the ninth district. At the time, it was a D plus 16, and no one was able to take down the incumbent. He was in office for 27 years at the time, 40 plus years of politics, 87 years old, Bill Pascrell. So he had a lot of time in office. But when I ran, we ended the race in 2020 with 31.6%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but this was the most votes that a Republican has ever gotten in the district by a lot.
Yeah.
Since 1983. And 2022, I decided to run again after seeing how we were able to make significant changes in the D plus 16. And we did even better. We broke our previous record and we ended with 43.6% of the vote. And I believe the reason why that is because we're a grassroots campaign. We're not establishment funded. In fact, a lot of the establishment party does not like my campaign, similar to like how most of the establishment does not like Donald Trump. I was focusing on the
You
policies
mean
that I
the
think matter.
Republican establishment?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, on both sides. But I was also attacked from within the Republican Party as well, too, to try and there's a myth here in New Jersey that this district is unwinnable and no one can unseat Bill Pascrell. And to be honest, I believe it's because the Republicans are working hand in hand with the Democrats to help prop up the situation that we've got in our state. And I've got one too many friends and even a relative that have been killed from gun violence in our city. And that's because we have these terrible policies that keep getting pushed forward. And when I see Republicans kicking the can down the road and giving lazy excuses as to why we can't get involved in a race, I decided to get up and run a race and run hard. And with the results that we've gotten, it's clear, very clear, that in the past 30 years, there hasn't been a candidate that has the policies, the vision, or the drive that I do. And I believe I speak not just for this generation, but the next generation moving forward.
Do you live in are you representing a black district?
The district is 13% black. The city that I live in, Patterson, it is an inner city. I live in the fourth ward, which is a predominantly black part of Patterson. But we have many different people from various backgrounds inside of our district, about 45% Hispanic, 37% non-Hispanic, and about 8% Asian, Arab, and everything else in between.
Do the blacks in New Jersey vote Republican? Do they support black or white Republicans at all?
I can only really speak for my district.
Right.
And at the time, the answer was no. However, in 2022, we got more Republicans to vote for. I mean, we got more unaffiliated Democrats to vote for Republican than at any other time. And my city of Patterson is typically a stronghold for my opponent. We're from the same city. He's been in office for well over 30 years, former mayor, and people tend to just vote Democrat because of muscle memory. But in 2022, I decided to crash a meeting that the Patterson City Council, as well as the congressperson, was doing. That that would have they were basically calling out a flyer that was being mailed out by some Republican PAC that showed that there was a displeasure with the equal opportunity in our state. And when they saw that, they came out and basically said that Republicans are racist, and we need a Republican to come out and disavow this. I came out and I disavowed this on a live stream with several thousand people watching, which swayed lots of Democrats to come and vote Republican for the first time. And since the crime rate has gotten worse in the district, especially as recent as December of this past year, we have hundreds and hundreds of migrants being dropped off in Secaucus, New Jersey, which is in our district. They're being bussed in from Texas. The New York mayor does not want to have any more migrants inside of his community, and they got stopped right there at the Lautenberg train junction in Secaucus. And the mayor of my city is now trying to turn our city into a sanctuary city. He wants more migrants to come in. He's begging for government resources. And Black people are finally starting to wake up. And it's not even just Black people. I would say even immigrants that came to this country and came in the right way. We have a lot of immigrants in our city, in our district. They don't want to see this. They don't want this coming here. And he's losing support faster than ever before. But the bottom line is this, is like, in order for us to defeat this guy, we need a lot of support. This is someone who's been in for decades, raised millions and millions of dollars.
Let me ask, what's wrong with the Blacks?
What do you mean?
The crime, the Black on Black crime, and the out of wedlock birth, and the anger in within the Black people and in the Black community. What's wrong with them? Why are they acting that way?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that stem to that stem from that question. I think primarily it's because there's not a lot of fathers in the household, unfortunately, in the Black community, and that's something that I would like to see a lot more of. We have different groups that are pushing for abortion. There's a lot of promiscuity in our community, and I think that one of the things that lead to a strong state as well as a strong nation is a strong nuclear family. And seeing that we don't have that, and seeing that there aren't too many opportunities invested in inner cities and areas that are predominantly African American or ethnic, I believe that without resources to mitigate those problems, whether it be recreational or even job opportunities within the community, it makes it hard for anyone to try and build a normal life. And sadly, some people turn to crime, and that does nothing but harm the Black community. That's something that I want to reverse with the Revive America plan, as well as the Freedom of Education plan.
Do you think that if you brought in jobs, you brought in, try to clean up the community, would that change the Blacks?
I think with time, and I think it's gonna take time. And I don't want to speak about Black people as if they're just a monolith. I do understand that by and large, there's a lot of issues within the community, but I believe it's also going to take time before we see significant change.
Right. Why isn't there an emphasis on family more so than anything, and telling the Blacks they need to overcome the anger? They need to start thinking for themselves. They need to take responsibility for their own life. It seemed to me that would at least start to wake them up a little bit to realize it's not racism and not the white man, it's not slavery. It's just that they're not taking responsibility. Why don't we hear more of that from politicians than about programs and things like that?
Well, because I think the problem is also much bigger than just programs. This is something that's been indoctrinated in the Black community for longer than I've even been alive, whether it's through the media, whether it's through culture, or even in school. In schools today, Black people are taught that they're inferior in comparison to white people and many other races. And that makes it very difficult, especially for someone that's young and growing up in an impoverished area.
How are they taught that in school? What are they doing in school to make them think that?
Well, I've come across numerous parents who have showed me different reports that their children had to do. where they were basically trying to demonstrate the effects of slavery and generational racism and these kinds of things, and showing how, because many white people did not have to encounter this or go through this, that they somehow have an upper hand over others, which may be the case for most people, but by and large, I believe that being Black, and this is my personal opinion, I believe that being Black is one of the greatest things in the world. I think it's actually quite a superpower. And the reason why I say that is because if you can overcome the adversity, if you can overcome the nonsense that comes your way, I think that you can become unstoppable. I myself have become one of the most influential people in politics in the Republican Party in this state. And this is from a small guy with dreadlocks coming from the Fourth Ward of Paterson, New Jersey, in the middle of the hood. And I've been able to get many people involved in politics, which led to hundreds of people listing their candidacies, some getting elected to various seats across the state, and much more. And I don't think that this would have been possible had I continued to believe the things that I'm taught in school or taught by our favorite rapper or your favorite movie or media, showing that we can only amount to slavery and Jim Crow era kind of things. I don't think that does much of a disservice. That doesn't mean we should.
Are they taught this by Black teachers?
That I don't know, because I'm not inside those classrooms. I can only speak on the things that I've seen within my community and the conversations that I've had with parents. But I have seen teachers from various races pushing that kind of rhetoric.
I noticed that slavery has nothing to do with the condition that not all, but most of the Blacks are in, because slavery been over 150 years ago. They don't even know anything about slavery, except the lies that they hear about in movies and things like that, and maybe the schools. But they don't know anything about slavery. And my generation, and before me, they did much better with the so-called Jim Crow laws and things like that. The Blacks did much better. They had families, they had jobs, they built businesses, they bought land. They were not blaming anyone for their issues in life. They dealt with their own issues. And so they seemed to, and they didn't blame anything on slavery at all. And so to allow the Blacks to still use the excuse of slavery, which is a lie, it has nothing to do with them, it's only keeping them in the hell that they're in. Why don't politicians erase that idea and just let them know that they're holding themselves back because they think in groups rather than individuals?
Well, I agree with you. And another thing I want to touch on is something that I've noticed in various communities, especially in the inner cities. There's a growing influence of Marxism and socialism that's being pushed on the Black community. And it's being promoted that, this unification and somehow a breakaway society will be able to prosper away from white people and away from other races. And that's not what the concept of this country was for. When the founders initially created this country, it wasn't perfect. There were a lot of problems with our country, but the Constitution was written for a perfect country that did not exist yet. And it's taken time for us to get to this point. And we have Marxists and socialists, especially in our education system, that are educating children that the only way forward is to resist capitalism, resist the nuclear family, resist all these traditional things that help keep a country and keep a nation strong. And I think that as a Black person, when you see these kinds of things and you feel like you're outcasted or you're not a part of the conversation, I could see why many of them would gravitate to these kinds of things, especially in scenarios when a lot of the leadership is gone in our communities and inside of our homes. So I can't fault Black people for thinking that way, but I believe that there is a better way, and that's what I'm intending on doing, and that's what I continue to do by speaking with people in our community, going to city council meetings, and bringing light to the issues that are really affecting us. And I think with what's happening now at the southern border, now that it's affecting my community, it's affecting places like Chicago, it's affecting places like Houston, Texas. Many Black people across the country are starting to wake up and realize that this is no longer about us anymore. And if we don't say anything or stand up, we could get replaced. And I think that's what the end goal is about a decade from now if this continues.